The last time we talked a week ago, the NBA Finals was just starting. Well, at this point in time, it might be all but over. So today, Amir is joining the show on a basketball podcast, a little bit different, but we're going to be diving into the NBA Finals and basically answering the question: can the Mavericks make some history and win 4 out of the next 5 games against one of the best teams of all time? That's the topic of today's show. Of course, if you enjoy, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. Let's get into it. First thing here, question of the day for you guys at home. Of course, Tyrese Maxey's behind our cameras here, so keep that in mind. But going into next season, whatever criteria you want to use, whether it's skill, team building, whatever, rank these 5 point guards. Amir, I might even ask you this question at the end of the show. So again, Trae Young, Jrue Holiday, Tyrese Maxey, Jamal Murray, and James Harden. I'm doing my rankings for the offseason. I find this extremely difficult to round out the list, but keep that in mind. And of course, you guys at home, drop that in the comments. But let's get into it here. Like I said, in just a week's time, the Celtics have taken a commanding 2-0 lead. And if this was any other playoff series but the NBA Finals, Amir, I would say that the Mavericks, no doubt, they have a chance to come back. They're going home. And at the end of the day, Boston is supposed to protect home court, especially being one of the greatest teams we've ever seen. That's not my opinion. That's based off the analytics. Statistically, they're one of the best teams we've ever seen, period, right? From star power to just their overall success in the regular season and postseason. I'll ask you this question. What are your overall thoughts on this series so far? Is there something that you wanted to see so far, or just your overall thoughts on games 1 and 2?
Well, the biggest thing is, we saw this throughout the playoffs. Boston obviously has a better team. And, we're now finally seeing that Boston is literally making Luka beat them by himself. Boston has a complete, starting five full of guys that can defend on the perimeter and make it hard to score on guys like Kyrie, PJ, Derrick Jones. And they're literally letting these guys shoot threes and pretty much saying, hey, Luka's going to have to drop, 35-point triple doubles,
Yes.
40-point triple doubles and make them beat them. And guess what? It's still not working. And I think now we're starting to realize, that up until this point for Dallas, that those guys like Gafford, those guys like Lively, those guys who haven't been on the biggest stage, that stardom is starting to finally hit them because they're struggling.
Yeah, no, I mean this Boston Celtics team throughout the regular season, I don't know if they lost back-to-back games. I could be wrong. I think at very most they did not lose 3 straight games. And this Mavericks team is going to have to go home and they're going to have to win 4 out of the next 5 games against, again, a team that on the season is 78-20. Absolutely unheard of. They almost have 4 times the amount of wins than losses here in this season from the season start until now. But let's just talk about some notes so far. I wrote down some notes about the Celtics and then, of course, the Mavericks as well. For the Celtics, Kristaps was ready all along, right? There was some reports that he might have been ready for that Cavs series if they needed him, but they didn't need him. Of course, Donovan Mitchell went down with an injury. The Celtics took care of business. They go on to round 3. There were some reports he could have been ready for that series. But, of course, Tyrese Halliburton went down after game 1, and then, Boston took care of business. So they haven't needed to throw him out in the court. They haven't been desperate to use him. Going into game 1, they said, hey, no better time than now. Let's throw Kristaps out there. And in my prediction last week, Amir, I said that Kristaps was a sneaky Finals MVP guy because of the fact that he wants to prove his worth in the series. It's not only to the Celtics, because this is a guy that has literally had the easiest road to the finals out of any player I've ever seen in my life, right? Because he literally sat on the bench for 90% of the playoff run. So I said he wanted to go to this finals and prove himself to the Celtics players, the organization, and the fans. And then he wants to also get revenge on his old team. He wants to prove himself to his old team that kind of shipped him off the die. So Kristaps came into this series with definitely with a couple of chips on his shoulder. But outside of that, like you mentioned there, they're making Luka be Superman. They're making it difficult on him. They're guarding him and Kyrie completely different. And they're making Luka drop 60 to 70 points a night, which he hasn't done yet, but he's still having a great series in his own right. Jaylen Brown, Amir, maybe the biggest storyline so far in the finals. Jason Kidd said Jaylen Brown was the best player in this finals. Any thoughts about that here? Maybe it's just an impact thing. Maybe it's actually true.
I mean, it's kind of different if your best player, and Jason Tatum is playing inconsistent. As far as he's having a stellar performance one night, and the other night, he's stinking it up. But I mean, Tatum has been struggling this entire playoff run. I mean, shooting bad from the field. I want to see he's shooting like 29% from three this playoff run. And, Jaylen
I'll pull
Brown
it up.
has
I have
had
the stats.
and Jaylen Brown has consistently been, I mean, the best player on this team at the playoffs so far. And this discussion was taking place last year, when both of them was kind of struggling in the playoffs and the regular season, kind of being inconsistent. But up to this point, I think we're starting to actually have a legitimate argument. I'm not gonna be mad if somebody says Jaylen Brown is the best. I don't like to jump the gun because Tatum, up to this point in his career, has been absolutely amazing, has been leading the team. But Jaylen Brown is playing a lead on both ends of the ball, so it's really not
Yes.
crazy to think that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I have the stat here. So I don't have his overall playoff numbers, but Jason Tatum is shooting 35.5% from the field, not the three-point line, just from the field. And that is the worst career field goal percentage in NBA Finals history. Keep that in mind. And this is a guy that's widely perceived to be a top 10 player in the league, arguably a top 5, right? Depending on which Boston Celtics fan you ask. But in this finals, as you see there, he's averaging just about 17 points, 10 rebounds, and 8.5 assists, shooting terribly from the field. But Amir, there's some guys that I've seen talk about it, and this is a guy that 2 years ago, when this team faced the Golden State Warriors, this is a guy that in that final series, rightfully so, it was his first ever finals, but he looked timid, right? He looked scared to take over and be this top 10 player in the league. And I see that same exact thing in this series. Now, also in his defense, and if I was in his shoes, I'd probably be doing the same thing. He doesn't need to do that. He doesn't need to go out there and not use his all-star teammates and, just take over and, hey, this is my team. You guys, help along the way. This is a guy that is playing this. He's playing the smart way. And now shooting the ball, it's not being great, but he does look very timid. He's not taking over these games like we usually see the best player on teams do, especially in the NBA Finals, for example, like how Luka's taking over games. But I mean, hey, his team's up 2-0 and he hasn't needed to take over. Now, I will say, if he starts to take over and the supporting cast is still playing relatively the same, it's going to be scary. And I think the Mavericks have no chance in this series. But overall, I mean, the Celtics are up 2-0. And I forgot to mention this at the beginning of here, but really quickly, teams that go up 2-0 in the NBA Finals are 80. They win 86% of the time. If I can speak correctly, they win 86% of the time, which that makes sense. These are two of the best teams in the world, and beating one of the best teams in the world 4 out of 5 straight times, it's just not likely. But your thoughts here about anything here on this screen here?
Yeah, and the thing I want to mention about Tatum as well, the biggest problem I have with Tatum is, what we've seen every year, if you look at his stats, it's always a noticeable drop in his production and his field goal percentage offensively.
Yeah.
I want to see on average it's dropping around 3 to 5% every single year. And people are so quick to bash guys like Embiid for being playoff frauds. But Tatum, I've tried to support Tatum as much as I can, but every single year we see him struggling. The moment is too big, and he's been struggling shooting the ball consistently. Yeah. But the one thing I do give him credit for is when he's not shooting well, he makes up for it defensively on the glass and playmaking as well, too, which I give him credit for.
Yeah, this is the best rebounding season I think Tatum's ever had. This is a guy that's rebounding the ball crazy. It seems like every single night. Well, I'll say this. As the addicted sports bettor that I am, Amir, in the regular season, this was a guy that his rebound line was at like 7.5, 8.5. Now it's at like 10 or 11.5. It's absolutely crazy. You can't even bet the rebounds anymore, but it used to be free. It was kind of similar to Sabonis, right? You could just throw those two on the parlay and I need Sabonis to come back, man. I need Sabonis to come back because my pockets need it. For the Dallas Mavericks here on the flip side, again, the history is not on their side. If you go down 2-0 in the finals, you lose 86% of the time, right? And in Boston's history, of course, they've won 17 championships. In their history, when they go up 2-0 in the finals, they're 8-0 in that scenario. So for the Mavericks, let's just say all the odds are against them. But they have a player on their team that has been a part of the greatest comeback in sports probably history in Kyrie Irving when they came back down 3-1 against the 73-9 team. I'm a Cavs fan. Let me throw that out there. But for the Mavericks here on the screen, they're just being outmanned and they're being outcoached, right? And it's not really their fault because the Celtics, you're not supposed to have 6 all-star caliber players. You're not supposed to have that. And then some savvy veterans along the way, guys like Derek White and Al Horford in the mix. You're not supposed to have that much talent with a good head coach. Everything is just going right for the Boston Celtics. And I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, a team like the OKC Thunder, where they've just drafted so well, like the Boston Celtics, the Thunder are going to be like this in a couple of years because they're going to, they're just going to continue to grow and develop and gain more chemistry together. They're going to be scary like this in a couple of years as well because you're not supposed to draft as well as some of these teams have. And the Celtics have put it all together and they're healthy and they look like they're going to run away with it. But the Mavericks, they have their two-star players. They have good role players. This is a typical NBA Finals team, but they're just being outcoached and outmanned because the Celtics have so much from top to bottom. But Luka overall is just not getting enough help. Last game, what do you have? A 37, 11, and 11 game. And Kyrie in this series, you have his numbers there at the bottom of the screen. He's averaging just about 14 points on 35% from the field, just like Jason Tatum. It's been ugly for those two. Maybe there's two lids on the rim for those guys. And then 0% from three from Kyrie Irving. He's not really known as the three-point shooter, Amir, but we know that guy. He can get it going, but this dude just can't put the ball in the basket seemingly in this series, and Luka's just not getting enough help here. But your thoughts on the Mavericks so far in this series? Is there any chance here? Tomorrow night, they have their first game at home here in the NBA Finals. They've been a pretty good home team in this postseason run. Is there any chance they can, finally get back on the right track?
I think they definitely will, win game three. Even though Boston has swept to the playoffs so far, we've seen times where, they went down, 20 on the road, twice against Indiana. We've seen them struggle against teams and go down big in moments. And so, I think Kyrie and Luka could definitely steal this game three. Game four is going to be a different, discussion because, honestly, Dallas is really dependent on Kyrie to step up. For me, coming into the series, I predicted Kyrie to have, a monster series. Kyrie constantly elevates in the playoffs, no matter his matchup, no matter who's guarding him. But, the problem that I have is that entire Boston team, they all have experience. They've all been there before. Guys like Jrue Holiday. Last time Jrue Holiday played in the finals, in 2021, we've seen, Devin Booker and CP come on the court and him lock them up so bad, the Suns just start putting them both in the corner. And so, I think for this Dallas team, Kyrie has to step up, and they really got to just finally gain that confidence they had back up until this point.
Yeah, shout out to Jrue Holiday, Game 2 MVP for the Boston Celtics. And there's been a lot of clips that are going around, Amir. I don't know if you've seen them because you just got back from a trip, so hopefully that was great. But Jrue Holiday in the offseason, everyone's saying that, everyone's practicing their offense, making sure they can stay on the court. But this is a guy that just practiced defense. Absolutely insane. Sounds like a misery from a guy that didn't play defense in my day playing basketball. I was more so of a JJ Redick, Amir. No stereotypes, but JJ Jrue Holiday's been amazing. And hey, Amir, honestly, I want to throw this out there. The last time a team came back down from an 0-2 deficit, Jrue Holiday was on that team. In that series against the Suns, the Bucks were down 0-2, and the Bucks came back and won that series in 6 games. So it's possible that teams can rattle off 4 straight wins when you have a player that could arguably be the best player in the world. Giannis was on that Bucks team. Luka's on this Mavs team. It's possible when you have a talent that's special. But Jrue Holiday's not on the Mavericks side, is what I'm getting at here. He's on the Celtics side, and they're up 2-0, so something to look out for. But I just want to throw some keys to success here to close out this series, right? Because Boston, the Mavericks, one team needs it more than the other. But just my 2 cents here in the situation. But again, they're not even going to see this video. For Boston, their keys to success is just to continue to be steady, right? Because I think the margin of error for Dallas is so little because Boston has so much, I guess, talent on their roster and so much star power. They have everything, of course. But Dallas's margin for error is so little that if Boston just continues to be steady in this series, we've seen that. I had it on the last slide. Dallas can't really hold a lead in this series. So if Boston just is steady, everybody on their team is averaging just about 15 to 20 points, this team's going to end up winning this series, and we're going to have a real discussion. Who is the actual Finals MVP? It's going to be something for the first time in a long time where we legitimately have a discussion who actually was the best player in the series, because if this team is playing like they will be, you can make an argument for a lot of players. And outside of that, force Luka to be Superman. Of course, that's what he's been so far in this series. It hasn't worked out for them, but don't fix what's not broken. I messed that quote up there a little bit, but don't make unnecessary changes. Force Luka to continue to beat you. And then for Dallas, you need to win game 3, like we just talked about there, and you talked about. If you don't win game 3, that's it, right? We're focusing on next season. Next week, we're not even going to talk about the NBA Finals. We're going to shift our focus on to next year. But if you win game 3, you can extend the series and at least put a little bit of hope into your locker room and a little bit of doubt into their locker room. So for Dallas, you need to win game 3. And Kyrie, like you mentioned there, Amir, a couple times, Kyrie needs to show up. But we know he can do that. He just needs to turn back to untucked Kyrie here in either Boston or Cleveland. So overall, of course, we're back here on this screen. I think Boston right now, according to the betting odds, has a 90 to 92% chance to win this finals. But they've been here before. They were given an 88% chance to win the finals after game one in the Warriors series. That didn't go out well for them. And against the Heat last year in the Eastern Conference Finals, they were given a 90% chance to win that one as well. That didn't work out for them. Amir, any final thoughts about the NBA Finals series? Again, game three is tomorrow. Any last thoughts here before we move on to the fun part of the video?
I think this series isn't over. I mean, because we have, arguably two of the best closers in the league, you still have a chance. And even though Boston has, sort of ran away with these games down the stretch, and I think we're going to get to a point where Kyrie and Luka both are going to start cooking, both going to start getting going. The biggest, worry that I have is the fact that, I mean, Dallas can't run zone against Boston. And we've seen it, that Dallas loves to run zone ever since they got Gafford. And they have a lot of, two bigs that can really roam, and they love being late to the rim to alter and rim protect. But the problem is, if Boston keeps shooting like this and they keep playing how they're supposed to keep playing, this series is over. But I think Dallas will take this game three, and game four, we'll kind of see from there.
Well, some quick questions here before we get out of here, Amir, because this series might be over by next Tuesday. You're quick. I need your finals prediction, and then I need your finals MVP prediction at this point in time. So
Well,
how
for me,
many games do you think is going to go?
Yeah, well, for me, I had Dallas in 6, and I had Luka winning Finals MVP. But now at this point, I got Dallas in 7, and I got Luka winning Finals MVP.
No, I mean, that would be my hope, right? Because Dallas was my preseason pick to win it all. It was a long shot. I should have bet on it, right? But at this point in time, it's hard to say that Dallas can win 4 out of 5 straight games. So it's kind of a heart and mind difference there. I want Dallas to go out there and win and win in 6 or 7 games. Shoot, winning in 6 games, win it on your home court in front of Mark Cuban. But realistically, I'll give the Mavericks 1 game. I'll say Boston probably closes this out in 5 with the Finals MVP. Let's get crazy. Let's go out there and give it to Jrue Holiday, a savvy veteran. He deserves it. But Amir, I don't want you to escape this question here because I'm not going to answer it because in a couple of weeks after the NBA Finals wraps up, we have free agency. And then after that, of course, I do my annual, which is going to be the second year where I go through the top 10 players at each and every position. And then I eventually give a top 50 players in the NBA list here to cap off that 6-week stretch. But I want you to, I want you to look at these guys, right? Whatever criteria you want to use, whether if it's skill, whether if it's, just offense, whatever criteria you want to use, rank these 5 players. I'm curious to think what you have to think. Curious to know what you have to think if I can put my words in the right order. But your thoughts here, of course, Trae Young, Jrue Holiday, Tyrese Maxey, Jamal Murray, James Harden, all of them bring a different. I guess all of them have a little bit of a different game to them here. Your thoughts here about these 5 players and rank them here if you have, if you can.
Well, for me, I'll put Trae at 1. I'll put Maxey at 2. I'll put Jamal Murray at 3, Holiday at 4, and Harden at 5. And that last spot might be, a little debatable, but for me, Trae Young is the best player on this list. I think that's with no debate. For 2, I got Tyrese Maxey, and I think his ceiling is really high. And, for me, I really value playoff translation. Jamal Murray at 3, he elevates in the playoffs throughout his entire career. This past year was the outlier year. Every single year up to this point, he completely elevates. And Jrue Holiday, I have over Harden based off the defensive loan. And, Harden, up to this point, he's kind of transitioned his game to more of a traditional point guard and, and more from just more so shooting threes. But, his defense is not there. He's inconsistent. Time to time. But Jrue Holiday, for a fact, is always going to be the best defensive player on the court. We've seen him single-handedly win series and anchor defenses. And so I have Jrue Holiday at that 4 spot over Harden.
It's a sad day. It's a sad day. I like those rankings, right? But it's a sad day here because growing up here, James Harden was definitely, average.
Yeah.
There was a stretch where we were betting on the fact that this dude wasn't going to score 30 in a game. He was by far and away one of the best players in the league for a good 5-year stretch. It's just sad to see one of those guys fall, but I do have to agree. I don't know what order I have these guys in, but I think Harden might be at number 5 at this point in his career. It's just crazy how some of these guys start to fall off when they get older. But let's move over here. Let's move over here to the fun part of the video here before we wrap up. Again, shorter podcast today, but in the NBA world, there's not a ton to talk about. So you got to stick with us here. But over here on the we're over here on, excuse me. Let's see if we can get the screen bigger. We can't. Regardless, you guys will stick with us here. We're gonna do a $15 draft. This is something I didn't tell Amir about before the show, but this is something that I did with Bakari here at the end of the Western and Eastern Conference Finals rounds. But basically, you have $15. These are the best players combined on both teams. You can build this team however you want. But whenever you're ready, Amir, you can take it away with your first pick, or I'll give you the option here. Do you want the first pick or do you want back to back? Because we're going to do a snake style draft.
Okay, I'll go ahead and do back to back.
So you do back to back. So
Yeah.
that forces me to go out there and grab Luka Doncic because you got to grab the best player in the world, and I can't let you have back to back picks here with Luka on your team as well. So I'll go out there, I'll spend the $5 and get Luka Doncic off the board. So then, Amir, you're back up on the clock. Which route do you want to go here to start your team off?
So I'm gonna go ahead and go. Okay, so right here I'm gonna go ahead and go Kyrie and Jason Tatum.
Kyrie and Jason Tatum. Kyrie, of course, $4 player, and I moved him down here strictly because of how he's been in the playoffs so far. But this is a guy that you know what? I mean, Jason Tatum, of course, we know the talent he can be. Top 10 player in the world. That puts me back on the clock here. Now I have back-to-back picks, so this puts me in an interesting situation. I could go out there and just say, hey, you know what? Give me Jaylen Brown and Derek White, right? I mean, that would give me $2 left, but then I would have to have Derek Jones Jr., Sam Hauser, or Josh Green as my big man, and that's just not something that I really want to do. So for that line of thinking here, what we're going to do, we're going to go out there and grab Daniel Gafford for $2. Daniel Gafford for $2. We're going to take a budget option here. He's a good roll man 5. He's going to do exactly what we need him to do. And, of course, he's a cheaper option down the board. I think he's just better than Horford at this point, to be honest with you, at least for the offense that I would like to run. And after that, it puts me in an interesting spot. So I know you can't take a $5 option at this point, so I'm going to keep that option open for me. And I'm going to go out there and grab a guy with some size. I love Derek White, but I'm going to grab PJ Washington, a guy that I can throw at the 4 here. And he can be my go-to defender, is what I'm getting at here. And I still have, Still have $5 to spend. So, Amir, your thoughts here, and you're back up here with back-to-back picks.
So for me right here, obviously Kyrie's great. I think Tatum, in my opinion, he's kind of a great secondary playmaker, slash rebounder and a great defender. So, I think I have good size there. And, I want to add more shooting while also adding defense and also adding more playmaking at the same time to kind of pick up for Kyrie's, playmaking deficiency at times, because I want him to be, more of a score first point guard at times. So I'm going to go ahead and grab Derek White to kind of add to that size.
Right.
And then I will also.
Yeah, you can take your time here, man. You can take your time here right now. You have, of course, the scoring ability, the star power, and then you also have your glue guy in Derek White. Now you just kind of need to round it out, but of course, you're going to have to deal with Big Al there.
Yeah, honestly, okay, so right now I'm at $12.
Yeah.
This is actually very difficult.
That's why I put the board this way. So, you can't, we couldn't get one of these big men for $1.
Yeah, honestly, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and get Derek Lively. In my opinion, I think he's, been the best rim protector
that would put you
on
at
this
15.
board so far. That'll put me at 15.
Yeah, that would put you exactly at 15. So you can revert the Derek White selection if you would like.
Okay.
Unless you're going to run the 4.
Yeah, all right. I'm going to go ahead and put man, this is actually tough. So we got 7, so we got 12. So I only got $3 to work with. You
could go, Al Horford, right? I mean, he could always be there.
Yeah, I could go with Big Al. I really could.
I mean, that would you'd be able to keep Kyrie, Derek White, and Jason Tatum.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and honestly, I'm gonna go ahead and put Big Al at the 5.
Okay, Big Al. I mean, again, he's someone that is still solid in his own right. I don't want to come out here and make it seem like Al Horford's a bum. I just think that hey, he might be someone that we can pick on here, especially in this hypothetical world. But you have everything. You have the defense, star power. So I need something to match it. You have Kyrie. You have Jason Tatum. I need to get a defender, Amir, some more of them. And I'm going to go out there and get Drew Holiday, right? A guy that we saw at times can be physical and he can go out there and give you an extra offensive punch. And he's going to be my Kyrie defender. So far, it's worked out pretty well. And if Jason Tatum's getting going, we can just throw Drew Holiday on Jason Tatum. And then that leaves me with $1. And that's when I'm going to go out there and grab Derrick Jones Jr., right? A guy that can be that secondary defender for me. So that gives me a lineup where Drew Holiday is kind of my secondary guy. It's kind of a 1A, 1B situation with Drew Holiday and PJ Washington as my secondary score. Derrick Jones Jr. is their corner sitter, and Daniel Gafford's a roll man 5. And then we have Luka to take us home. But that leaves you with $1, Amir. You have Josh Green, Sam Hauser. There's some other guys. If you want to get Tim Hardaway Jr., right? If you want to go out there and draft Luke Cornett, some other guys there. If you want to draft, I tried to make sure we kept the players on the board that we were drafting. But if you want to go out there and draft another wing from that's not on the list, go ahead. So I mean, for Dallas, Josh Green's out there. You have Jaden Hardy, who's a nice, solid wing there. But of course, if you want to grab a guy like, well, I'm kind of drawing a blank here, Tim Hardaway as well, even though he's taking a step back. For Boston, I pretty much have all their best players, unless you want to draft O'Shea Brissett, who was solid like 5 years ago.
Mm. Um,
Sam
you
Hauser's a
know,
big shooter, right?
for me, I'm more so worried about my front line. With Horford. Um, you know what? Honestly, seeing Tatum's been a great rebounder this year and up to this
Mm-hmm.
point, and still, has been able to somewhat switch on the centers and play down low at times. I'm gonna move Tatum at the 4, and then at my 3 spot, I'm gonna go ahead and add some shooting. I'm going to add Sam Hauser.
Sam Hauser. I mean, again, he's actually been a very solid defender in this post, like
Yeah,
in
yeah. I was about to say that too. His defense has been elevating too.
so there you go. There you go. Let us know in the comments, of course. Again, you have the question of the day, but also who do you think had the better lineup? Of course, I had the advantage of seeing the board and making the board beforehand. But Drew Holiday, Luka Doncic, Derrick Jones Jr., PJ Washington, and Daniel Gafford. It's really a one-man show, and we hope Drew Holiday and PJ Washington can pick up that secondary offensive punch. For you, Amir, you have offense, and you have the defense as well. With Kyrie Irving at the 1, Derek White at the 2, Sam Hauser and Tatum on the wing, and Al Horford. Big Al, even as a fossil, he rounds out the 5. So any last thoughts here, Amir? Again, it's a shorter show today. We ran through the NBA Finals, some keys to success, overall thoughts on the finals so far. You're on a basketball pod. That's a little bit different. But any last thoughts here before we get out of here? Because we are about to touch on Thursday.
Not really, man. I'm excited. I plan on being on the next one. And, I love just being on both podcasts. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, next week we have some playoff awards here, so we'll have to see what we can do. But playoff awards next week. After that, we're gonna get into a lot of fun stuff like free agency predictions. We're gonna have things on the show like our top 10 positional list, right? At every single position, top 10, top 50 players. We'll do some power rankings. A lot of stuff here in this off season. So stay tuned. Of course, if you enjoyed, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. The support's been great on the road to 20K. Can't get there soon enough. But until Thursday, stay happy, stay healthy, get out of here. All right. That was actually a really good show, actually. I mean, it was a shorter show, but I mean, it was still about a half hour.
But
Yeah, let me just I gotta hang up here, so I'll text you, just stay by your phone. It'll literally take me like 5 minutes to
all right, bet.
all right.